Welcome back to Fullerton College's Prepress class. This is Print 75 and 77 combined lecture. This is Professor Ben Kiewit. We're still looking in video 3 now, I believe, of PIA's Prepress Trainees Manual, section 3.1 Graphic Arts Workflow. And we're talking about the Prepress workflow now. This is the part which is more about what we are trying to learn about doing in class. But it's important to understand the other parts because Prepress doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists as a part of a complex ecosystem. Q circle of life and stuff, and talk about becoming the grass. But really, if you don't understand what's going on in sales and estimating, you're going to have a bad time. And if you don't understand what's going to happen to the print job after you send it to the press team, you're also going to have a bad time. But let's look at our own little slice of the world right now. So the Prepress Supervisor would be in charge of the entire Prepress team if you're working at a place big enough to have a whole team of Prepress. I always wanted to work on a team, never really got to. Anyways, they also make decisions about what you're keeping on hand, keep your proofing press and toners in supply, make sure the right papers are on order. They do a lot of management outside of just managing the people, but really inventory and supply management to make sure everything's ready to go for this sort of thing, for printing, for the job. They also sometimes have to help make the tough calls of which clients can be delayed when it comes down to crunch time and you really need to get something done and you can only do one of 2 or 3 jobs. Which one has to be done and which ones can be delayed? Important question. To steal someone else's analogy, it's like juggling a bunch of balls. And some of the balls are made out of plastic and some of the balls are made out of glass. And from time to time, you have to deliberately drop a plastic ball to ensure that none of the glass ones drop. It's a tough job. Making these calls is hard. That's why they pay you a little more to be the supervisor, if you work someplace big enough to be a supervisor. The scanner operator doesn't really exist anymore as a job in most shops. There may be 1 or 2 still hanging on somewhere in some shops that haven't gone fully digital, but this is 2020 now. Wow, I sound like Hugh Downs and Barbara Walters. This is 2020. But in this far into the digital year, we've been doing over 30 years of digital print and digital file prep in the industry. It's unlikely at this point that there are very many shops at all hanging on to still using photo plate processing and manual paste up and stripping to produce things. If there are, they might use a scanner. They might have a scanner operator. Most shops still have a scanner because you still do get some hard copies of things, sometimes hand-drawn artwork, and sometimes you get old photographs that need to be scanned in. But the life of a scanner operator as a dedicated position in a shop, even a big one, is pretty much over. Let me interject some career advice into this slide real quick, because I've seen some good things happen of this and some not good things. Also call back to one of my favorite movies of recent years as well in all of this. And here we go. So scanner operators have gone away because digital cameras now capture most of the imagery that would have been captured on film and then scanned. There's almost no reason to need a person to scan photos because getting a physical photo is rare now. And the Prepress Technician will just do that as part of their side job at their main job. So digital scanners, and just know that as technology changes, positions come and positions go. Things you do come and go in life. And you may find yourself no longer having a job because you've dedicated your life to running a scanner and now there's digital cameras. There are things you can do to future-proof yourself and make your career usable to make sure you don't hit a dead end. You're never sure what's going to be developed and what new technology is going to come out there and how it's going to affect things. So I will always have advocated, always, trying to get a big picture understanding of what's going on. Understand what the people next to you are doing. Understand if you're in pre-press, know what the press operators are doing, know what the finishing operators are doing. Also know what the salespeople are doing. I don't mean put your nose in everybody's business, but ask questions and listen to their answers. Pay attention when they complain about things. Try to understand as much of the greater portion of what you're doing as possible. And also, whatever your expertise is, try to expand it and learn ways of making your knowledge useful. Example from a movie that I love. If you guys have seen Hidden Figures. If not, go see Hidden Figures. It's freaking about NASA and it's about really cool stuff going on. But anyways, in this movie and in the history of what happened, these women who used to work as computers, because computer used to be a job title, not a machine, guys. Keep that in mind as you work on anything you're working on in life. Your job title could become the name of a machine in the future, so be ready for that. But as these women, actually really cool black women in this one, are working for NASA in the 60s to help figure out how to get a person into space. And they're having trouble getting the math to work for how to enter orbit and get back out of orbit. These women are working by hand with slide rules and pen and paper, doing complex equations to figure out how to put rockets into orbit. And again, their job title is computer. Well, the government finds out about some little company called International Business Machine, I think it was, and I think it was then in the movie, IBM, starts creating machinery computers that will do mathematical calculations for you. And one of the greatest moments for me in the whole film, and I'm really sorry if you haven't seen it. If you haven't seen it, skip ahead and watch the next slide because I don't want to spoil it. But one of the more clever women realizes that they're going to be replaced by these machines that have the same name as their job. They also realize that these machines are complicated and not many people know how to operate them. So what do? They go to the library and find ways to beg and borrow the correct books, which sometimes they didn't want to be given because of their sad status in the world at that point in history. But they found a way to get their information, and they learned how to program computers and how to use them to do the math. So rather than being knocked over and destroyed by this new technology helped them define their careers and develop themselves into even more of a necessity at their jobs because they became the only people capable of running these new machines. So that's my exhortation to you here. As you're working, if you see things changing in the world, don't be afraid of the change and try to fight against it. Instead, try to figure out where it's going and join it. I can also make analogies for things I tried once in life, but I'm really, really awful at, so I didn't really go back to. I did at one point try to surf. I'm listening to your laughter at this. Yes, me, Ben, surfer, right? I did try to surf. I wasn't great at it, but there's a thing about surfing that even if you don't surf, you can kind of understand it. You're out there and there's these huge waves. The power of the entire ocean is crashing around you. You have two things that can happen. You can either get hit by a wave and knocked over and thrown underwater and tumbled around, and hopefully there's no rocks, smash into the sand at the bottom and wash up on shore, hopefully still alive and bruised. Or you can get on the wave and ride that wave. Same thing with technology and how business changes. You can either be trapped by it and you can find yourself become obsolete, or you can decide that you're going to ride that wave. And as things change and digital scanners go away, maybe what you learned while scanning can help you somewhere else. I don't just say this, and I didn't go on this long tangent for no reason, because the guy who invented the G7 color management system, which is the current best system for managing output color on press and in photography in the world, Don Hutch, used to be a scanner operator and salesman. Ooh, my baby's crying. Hopefully she lies back down. I have to talk a little quieter. Anyways, Don Hutch figured out a way of calibrating scanners so he could show clients how they worked, because you don't want to unbox a scanner at somebody's office to sell them and have it produce ugly pictures. So he figured out how to make a scanner do the things he needed. And then he figured out that this method he came up with was more important than just scanning. And he went on to develop it and actually created the leading color theory of color management and color consistency in a way to maintain good long press runs with the same color. Go Don Hutch. Again, his job was going to disappear and he redefined it by what he learned doing it. Sorry for the pep talk. It only makes these videos longer. Let's speed through. Anyways, yeah. Knowledge of color science and keen sense of color are invaluable. They are in a lot of our positions. And if you develop those senses working as a scanner operator, you can figure out how to transfer it to other places. Past that, you have the Preflight Technician. I don't like the name Technician. It doesn't make me sound as cool. It makes me sound a little bit lesser, but it's fine. Technician. I still think we should be called Prepress Professionals. But there's a lot of gray area on what the actual job title of a pre-press person is. Anyways, our job is to go in there and look at the customer or designer supplied files and look for problems like missing fonts, missing pictures. Don't worry, we'll talk a lot more about this in the coming weeks. And sometimes they also fix things. And the Preflight Operator is a person who goes through and checks for issues with the print file. Their job is not to correct errors. Their job is to gather information. Again, their job is not to correct the file. That's a separate thing that the customer has to be willing to pay for, and that's a repair technician. Preflight is just finding the problems. This is kind of like if any of you guys watched House MD those few years ago when it was popular. Loved that show. I like Hugh Laurie. What can I say? It's also a bit of a Sherlock Holmes in the medical world kind of story. But he only diagnosed. That was his real his real skill as a doctor. He was terrible at patient care. His bedside manner, I mean, was that of an executioner practically. He didn't really treat the humans with much humanity that he was trying to heal. He was more interested in the question of what was wrong with them. And to some extent, that's the job of the pre-flight operator. You're looking for problems. You want to diagnose what's wrong. But there are other people, regular doctors, who that's their job to actually do that. Your job is just to find out what the issue is. And then the customer service person representative will contact the customer and tell them what's wrong and let them know where the issues are and what they need to fix, what needs to be fixed, ask them to fix what they can, and then also offer to fix it for a fee, of course, because it's work and you should be paid for your work. So it can result in additional charges. Sometimes, and I've seen this happen, you'll find problems and the client will say, yeah, okay, no biggie, I'll deal. And it hurts, but you go with it because they're paying for it. File repair is the other side. If they say, yeah, please fix it for me, then the file repair technician, who oftentimes is still the same one prepress person who does all prepress work for the whole company. That happens a lot in small companies. But file repair is the part where the client says, okay, sure, I'll pay you to fix it. Please help it work. And then the file repair technician goes in and fixes the problems that have been found in pre-flight. And this should be charged back to the customer. I feel that no matter how much you pay on these things, it's never enough. Because if you're really good at file repair, you can go in there and fix things, and the client will never know you touched it if you're good. And that's your goal. That's why I always say you need to be good at graphic design to do a good job in prepress. Because if you're going to do file repair, you're kind of a plastic surgeon, and you need to do reconstructive surgery on people's print files that aren't working that well. You have to go in there and make it look the way they wanted and make it functional without looking like someone else went in and handled it. The output technician is the person who creates the plates or whatever other image carrying medium. If you're doing screen printing, they'll be making the screens. If they're doing flexo, they'll be making the flexible plates. But they're the person who handles imposition and trapping and takes the approved, finished, pre-flighted, saying this is going to work now file and makes it work. And they produce the physical medium that's going to carry that image onto the substrate. Most times it's paper, but it's not always paper. Again, this can be just a part of one person's job. Digital proofs. So digital proofs, there's two kinds of proofs. There's hard proofs and soft proofs. And with computer to plate, you can produce them pretty well. A proof is a way for a client to see a print job before it's printed. The last thing you want to do is find out how it's going to look by doing the final job. You don't want to print 10,000 copies or 1,000,000 copies of something before you realize if it's going to work or not. So a proof lets you get a preliminary representation of what it's going to be. A hard proof means you printed it out on paper, oftentimes on a inkjet printer or a laser press like a Xerox printer, that will then let them see more or less what it looks like. The tricky thing with proofs is if you're going to run an offset press, you don't want to make plates until the client has approved of the proofs. So you can't run the plates to see if it works because the amount of time, money, energy, supplies, yada, 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 that goes into making those plates is substantial. And you only want to do that once. So the proof might be printed on a separate machine that's been calibrated to look like your output machine. Anyways, digital proofs are soft proofs, and those are sent by email or through FTP or through more secure, more specific systems that we will talk about in the future. The last bit of the pre-press phase is computer to plate. This is when you use your laser plate setter, you put in your coated metal offset plates, and the laser, I would say etch, because that's what people would use the word for. We don't really etch. The laser exposes part of the coating to make it either aquaphilious or aquaphobic, and hydrophilic or hydrophobic, to either accept water and reject ink, or accept ink and reject water. Anyways, we're not going to talk all about plate making and its details yet. That's a future chapter. But for now, understand that it happens, and you use a machine that looks kind of like a laser printer, but instead of printing out papers and pictures, it prints out plates. And then those plates are mounted onto a large offset press, or they're mounted onto a flexo press or whatever other type of press you're making. Sometimes you can even use it to make a polymer plate for letterpress. I've done this. Anyways, computer to plate is the part where you take the digital files and you get output to make physical plates to actually run liquid physical ink on an offset or other type of press. And this is the end of the pre-press phase, because once you made the plate and it goes onto the press, it's no longer pre, is it? Thanks for listening. We should hopefully be done in one more video.